Hey, what's going on, you guys? My name is the Raptor, and welcome back to Who'd Win and Why. And this time we've got Dobby, the magical house elf from the Harry Potter franchise, going up against Gollum, the corrupted stoor hobbit from the Lord of the Rings and Hobbit franchise. They may not be the most powerful or physically intimidating characters in their respective magical worlds, but they've both proven that they've got what it takes to battle. And today it's time for me to decide who I think would come out on top in a full-on fight to the death. So, who'd win and why? Let's find out. Alright, so first we're going to talk about Dobby. Dobby was a house elf who only lived to serve the Malfoy family, including Lucius and Draco, and he was treated extremely cruelly by them. In fact, most house elves are treated very poorly as slaves, but things would take a turn for the better for Dobby after his encounters with Harry Potter. After Harry successfully killed the basilisk in the Chamber of Secrets, he was able to trick Lucius into giving up ownership of Dobby, turning him into a free elf with no master to serve and saving him from further cruel treatment. For that he was extremely grateful, and he remained a loyal ally to Harry and his friends. While Dobby was looked down upon by many during his time of unemployment, it wasn't long before he joined the staff of Hogwarts, and he eventually got to work in the Hogwarts kitchens, finally allowing him to do good work that he actually wanted to do in the wizarding world. While he's made his fair share of mistakes in the past, Dobby is a naturally noble house elf and always tries to do the right thing for his friends. He rarely ever does things for the sole purpose of benefiting himself. In fact, he'll often get very upset with himself if he feels that he's made a situation worse. And while he obviously preferred working at Hogwarts than for the Malfoys, he's still very tolerant overall. Even when suffering physical abuse from the Malfoys, he didn't once try to fight back. Because of his various roles, Dobby doesn't particularly enjoy magical combat and much prefers his kitchen work, but he'll step onto the battlefield without hesitation when he must or when it comes to protecting his allies. And Dobby's got plenty of useful magical powers and tricks for a fight situation. Dobby is quite versatile with his magic, but there are clearly a few techniques that he uses more often than others. But no matter what magic he's using, he doesn't need a wand in order to do any of it, something that only the best wizards and witches are capable of. Dobby can teleport himself and others from place to place almost instantly, and being a house elf, he doesn't have the same apparition limits as others do, meaning he can go basically wherever he wants to. He can not only levitate objects and people considerable distances, he can also tamper with objects in a variety of ways, such as when he made a bludger specifically go after Harry in a Quidditch game. He can also disarm opponents with a disarming charm and fire magical powerful blasts that send foes flying, both of which he's very skilled at. Most importantly, however, all house elves are said to possess powers that extend beyond those of witches and wizards, and these are the guys that can shape change, attack and defend mentally, and use numerous helpful charms and deadly curses. However, while Dobby may be versatile, the spells he uses on opponents do require targeting and eye contact to perform, just like any other spellcaster's abilities. While Dobby is definitely more magically potent than a lot of people assume, his capabilities in the physical strength, speed, and durability departments leave a lot to be desired, and it wouldn't take too much more than a few blunt attacks up close to take him out. Also, Dobby has had a bad habit of constantly putting himself down and punishing himself if he feels he's screwed up, which can at times significantly disrupt his concentration. With that said, however, Dobby is a noble, loyal house elf that will do whatever's necessary to protect those he loves and do what's right. He may be underestimated by many, but he's got more than enough magic to take him far while on the battlefield. Alright, so now it's time to move over to Gollum. Many years ago, Sméagol was just your average stoor, one of the 3 hobbit races, and grew up living with his extended family, including his grandmother and his cousin, Deagle. Smeagol and Deagle decided to take a little fishing trip in the Gladden Fields on Smeagol's birthday, and it was here where they stumbled upon the extremely powerful artifact in the water known as the One Ring. The ring possessed the trait that all who encounter it start to develop a crazy obsession with it, and Smeagol was severely affected almost instantly, demanding that he have it as a birthday present. When Deagle refused, Smeagol choked his cousin to death in order to keep it for himself, and he became more corrupted by the ring over time, eventually leading to his own people banishing him away. He found a cave in the Misty Mountains that became his new home, and over the course of centuries, his body and mind were altered forever, leading to the creation of a new, ruthless personality. Gollum. Unfortunately, Gollum lost the ring to mild-mannered hobbit Bilbo Baggins after keeping it with him for so long. Even so, the ring absolutely took its toll on Gollum and turned him into a psychopathic, insane monster. Gollum is vicious, savage, and will stop at nothing in order to get what he wants, no matter how many people he has to kill. He won't be afraid to get up close and personal if it'll help him get back to his precious, and it's virtually impossible to reason with him to do otherwise. While Smeagol still exists somewhat prominently inside the corrupted brain, brain, Gollum is usually the one taking the wheel and doing what he wants. And while Gollum clearly isn't the most intelligent character by a long shot, he's still been able to trip his opponents up with riddles in the past, and he successfully betrayed his quote-unquote allies to help himself, meaning he's more than just a crazy cretin. At first glance, it may not look like Gollum would be such a strong fighter considering his size and proportions, but he definitely surpasses all expectations. He's strong enough to significantly harm characters that are equal to or far above him in terms of physical stature, including various hobbits and Gandalf the White. He can even take out goblins and other smaller monsters extremely quickly by attacking them by surprise and snapping their necks, which was actually a big strategy he would use to fend off against intruders while holding onto the ring in his cave. In addition to quickly ambushing his opponents, he's a very fast climber and substantially high jumper, making him a relatively fast and agile combatant who can easily maneuver his way around the battlefield. Gollum's able to take his fair share of punishment as well, as he can survive falls from heights of over 25 feet and even a hit from an elvish sword, and he can take a real beating before he becomes too vulnerable. Gollum may not be a pushover by any stretch, but he's also honestly not much more than a stoor hobbit in terms of his powers and abilities, making him not too versatile or unpredictable of a fighter. Additionally, Gollum and Smeagol don't always agree on what action to take and have been known to clash often in this regard, and it can certainly leave both of them wide open if it keeps up for too long or severely disrupts their actions. But aside from that, Gollum is proof that you don't need special powers or supernatural abilities as long as you're determined and ruthless enough to get what you want. If you're standing in his way in even the slightest amount, you can be sure that he'll stop at nothing to remove you from the equation. Alright, so now that I've gone over both of these characters, it's finally time for me to say who I think would win this battle. And this fight is very different from a lot of other versus debates simply because while both have been compared to each other quite often by fans, they honestly could not be more different. When it comes to their origins, personalities, powers, and abilities, there's not too much of a middle ground between them overall. However, after looking at what they respectively bring to the table, I do personally believe that Dobby would be the winner of this fight. And before you guys scream at your screens and tell me why Gollum would take the victory, there's definitely quite a bit of explaining that I want and need to do regarding how this fight is set up, which may honestly make this whole battle seem weird and frankly kind of unsatisfying to some people. Regardless, here's the big issue with Dobby versus Gollum. I'm not exaggerating when I say that the outcome of this fight is basically solely dependent on whether or not Gollum holds the One Ring in this battle, which is something that Gollum has at some points, but not all of the time. The ring grants Gollum invisibility, some augmentation of his powers and abilities, some influence over others, and some other smaller abilities, though only the most skilled could use the ring to its full potential. It wouldn't give Gollum more magical power over Dobby, but it would actually perfectly allow Gollum to get around Dobby's magic and go in for the kill. While invisible, Dobby would have no way of seeing or targeting Gollum with his magic, especially if the ring influences concentration, allowing Gollum to get in close. This was a big strategy Gollum had when he possessed the ring for years and fended off against intruders, and considering Gollum's superior physical stats and Dobby's relative fragility, I'd have no doubt that the vicious Gollum would be able to rip him to shreds if he got up close and personal, and the ring would absolutely allow him to do that. On the other hand, without the ring in Gollum's possession, it creates a completely different dynamic. There are still some areas where Gollum surpasses Dobby by a bit, most notably his physical stats and actual combat experience, but Gollum really has no way to counter Dobby's surprisingly extensive magical abilities without the ring. Gollum may be tough, but not tough enough to survive the constant offensive magic that would come his way. He may be quick, but not quick enough to dodge everything and get in close in time. Simply put, Gollum wouldn't have the opportunity to get up close to Dobby and fight him hand to hand that he would have with the ring, and if kept at a distance, there's really nothing Gollum could do to fire back against Dobby's magic. His powerful magical blasts, stun attacks, teleportation, levitation, tampering, and more would simply be too much for Gollum after enough time, and house elves are said to be even more powerful than witches and wizards in some areas, making him an overall extremely powerful magic user. In general, the whole course of this fight depends on one choice, and it's not exactly easy or really even possible to determine the correct choice. Gollum is not always in possession of the ring, and when something like this affects the fight so prominently, it's a really tough call. Of course, I wasn't about to do a double episode with both scenarios in play, so I ultimately had to pick the one that made the most sense to me and finalize a winner. And based on what I've analyzed and declared, you already know my pick. So that begs the question, why did I not give Gollum the ring for this fight? I feel as though it needs a fair amount of explanation, as I'm sure some people may not fully understand or agree with that decision. While I could technically see each interpretation being valid, and while I've seen both of them used, to me it made more sense to leave it out. Many versus debaters have the philosophy that a character should be analyzed when they're at their best, and while I do agree with that, I feel that it should only be applied when it makes sense to be. For example, I feel that when analyzing Ben 10 in his prime with all of his aliens, giving him Alien X makes sense since it's something that he now always has access to, and taking it away would actually be depowering him in a way that would almost never reasonably occur. Another example of this would be Scarlet Witch. While her power level can fluctuate immensely from time to time, there is no one power level that significantly more accurately describes her than any other, so looking at her at max power makes sense and does the character justice. However, a big example of when a character's maximum potential should not be looked at in my opinion is Thanos with the Infinity Gauntlet. While Thanos has collected all the Infinity Stones many times in the comics, the stones in and of themselves are not his and they're not something he always has access to. They can make such a huge difference in a fight, which further cements that there's something separate from Thanos entirely, and he's never able to permanently hold on to them. That's the whole point. Unlike Thor and his hammer or Green Lantern and his power ring, where those artifacts are synonymous with their characters, the gauntlet is something overall external from the Thanos character when looking at it from a full comic history perspective, and it's not his own maximum potential. In short, I would rather analyze a character when best accurately represented than at their best, assuming that those two things are not one and the same. With all of this in mind, it doesn't make too much sense to me to give Gollum the ring. It's not because I feel the ring makes him too powerful. In fact, I actually have no problem with the ring's abilities, and I'd be more than comfortable using the reasoning I mentioned before for this scenario if I felt it made more sense. My problem with including the ring is that the ring is an artifact that a ton of people have used over time, so he doesn't have it with him at all times. He may have found it and held onto it for a long time predating the books or movies, but he rarely has the ring in his possession during his actual page or screen time, and as soon as he loses it, it's never really considered his anymore. He may call it his precious and all that, but it doesn't belong to him, or Frodo, or Bilbo. It was never supposed to belong to someone during Tolkien's narrative. The ring is too separate from Gollum to really be considered part of his arsenal, so it makes sense to me that he wouldn't have the ring when analyzing him in a versus debate. Overall, either way you slice this fight, it's a fairly clear-cut victory, making the biggest question not who would win, but what you see as fair to analyze, and I think I've made my stance clear on that matter. Gollum absolutely has the potential to put Dobby down if he got up close and personal, but he simply wouldn't have that opportunity without something extra like the ring, and Dobby just has too many extra abilities at his disposal. Gollum is a vicious and tenacious fighter, but I feel that Dobby's magical powers make him too powerful and versatile for Gollum to stand up against. So, in my opinion, the winner is Dobby. So guys, thank you all so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. If you enjoyed this video, then please give this video a huge like. I always appreciate the likes. You can leave in the comments down below who you think would win and give your reasoning for it. And also let me know what other fights you'd like to see me do in the future. And if you guys could subscribe to my channel, that'd be so great. That would really help my channel out. But no matter what you do, thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. And next time on Who, When, and Why, for the Season 10 finale and 100th episode, we have the MCU Avengers going up against the MCU Guardians of the Galaxy. See you all then.